Bethesda's ambitious space RPG Starfield might be about to make one of its biggest moves yet, landing on the Nintendo Switch 2. According to reliable industry insider Nate the Hate, Microsoft is preparing to bring Starfield to Nintendo's next-generation handheld hybrid console sometime in 2026. If true, this would mark a huge milestone not just for Starfield, but also for Xbox's overall release strategy as it continues to expand its ecosystem beyond its traditional platforms like Xbox consoles and PC. Let's break down everything we know so far, what this could mean for Bethesda, and why Starfield on the Switch 2 could be a turning point for the game's future. But before we get into it, if you enjoyed the video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel to stay up to date with all the latest Starfield news. And if you want to further support the channel, consider becoming a member for early access on every video, members only content, your name in the credits, the ability to write in and have your comments featured, and access to the Discord community. This rumor began with a post from Nate the Hate, a leaker with a track record for accurate predictions, and he's definitely predicted some things correctly about Nintendo. In a tweet, he claimed that Indiana Jones and the Great Circle won't be the only Bethesda game coming to Nintendo Switch 2 in 2026. He said, "See that planet? You can go there." Aside from landing on PS5, Starfield is planned for release on Nintendo Switch 2 in 2026. This comes on the heels of Microsoft and Bethesda confirming during Gamescom opening night live that Indiana Jones and the Great Circle will release on the Switch 2 next year. With Indiana Jones officially on the way, Nate claims that Starfield is also coming to this new console starts to feel much more plausible. But while Bethesda hasn't officially confirmed Starfield for Switch 2 yet, of course, the timing of this leak couldn't be more interesting. Multiple reports already suggest that Starfield will be releasing on PlayStation 5 at some point in 2026, possibly earlier in the year, lining up neatly with the rumored Switch port. When Starfield first launched back in 2023, it was touted as an Xbox console exclusive, one that was meant to be a pillar beside other Microsoft games in their ecosystem alongside Halo, Forza, and other Bethesda games. But things have changed quickly over the last 2 years. Microsoft, of course, has been leaning harder and harder into a multi-platform approach, bringing its games to a wider audience. The company has already committed to bringing Call of Duty titles to Nintendo platforms in the future and has expanded franchises like Sea of Thieves and Hi-Fi Rush beyond just their Xbox consoles. And now, seeing Bethesda's biggest title spread to other systems is just another extension of that evolving strategy from Xbox. The Switch 2, with its hybrid design and next-gen capabilities, is shaping up to be an especially attractive home for these ports. If Indiana Jones and Starfield both arrive on Nintendo's platform, it signals a clear intent from Xbox. They're ready to treat Nintendo as a serious partner, not just a side platform. Starfield is a massive game at this point that's seen over 15 million players, and it's a sprawling RPG with hundreds of planets, endless systems to explore, and ambitious mechanics that push even the Xbox Series X. The thought of playing it on a handheld device like the Switch 2 raises a lot of questions about the game's performance, fidelity, and the compromises they might have to face. But it also represents a dream for many players out there. Imagine being able to take Bethesda's space epic on the go, diving into missions, exploring planets, or tinkering with your ship while traveling or lounging away from your console. The original Switch proved that there's a huge appetite among gamers for big budget RPGs on a portable platform, with games like Skyrim and The Witcher 3 leading the way and finding huge success there. And Starfield could be the next big RPG to thrive in that space. And from a business standpoint, it keeps Starfield relevant, of course. The game has struggled to maintain its momentum after a mixed reception to its first expansion, Shattered Space. But a multi-platform release could reignite interest in the game, bringing in new players, and extending its lifespan as Bethesda continues to support it with updates and DLC. And apparently, there's a new expansion coming in early 2026 as well, that could launch alongside the PS5 and Nintendo Switch 2 port. One of the big questions is whether the Switch 2 version of Starfield will launch with its expansions. Shattered Space arrived in 2024, and rumors suggest a second expansion, possibly titled Starborn, is planned for a spring 2026 release. If the Switch port launches alongside Expansion 2, it could be marketed as a complete edition of Starfield, similar to how Bethesda has packaged its older games with all DLC included. This would make a lot of sense, of course. New players picking up Starfield on Switch would get the full experience right out of the gate, with both major expansions included in the package. And of course, it would also give Bethesda a clean slate to reintroduce the game to audiences who may have skipped it during its original release back in 2023. Phil Spencer, Microsoft's head of gaming, has made it clear that Xbox intends to support the Switch 2 in a big way. "We've been supporting Switch 1, I want to support Switch 2, he said earlier this year. He also said, "Nintendo has been a great partner. We think it's a unique way for us to reach players who aren't PC players, who aren't players on Xbox." This partnership has already produced impressive results, of course, with major franchises like Minecraft thriving on Nintendo systems. I mean, that game is just a perfect fit there. But it's also bringing tentpole Xbox and Bethesda titles like Indiana Jones and the Great Circle and Starfield over to the Switch too. And this further solidifies the partnership and opens the door for even more cross-platform releases in the future. It's worth noting that Bethesda already has a history of bringing its games to Nintendo hardware. Skyrim, Doom Eternal, and even Wolfenstein 2 all launched on the original Switch, albeit with performance compromises, of course. The Switch 2's more powerful next-gen hardware could make ports of current-gen games like Starfield far more viable. Of course, one of the biggest questions on everyone's mind is how Starfield will actually run on the Switch 2. The game is notoriously demanding, and even on Xbox Series XS consoles, players have to choose between performance and fidelity modes. Now that it's released, we know the full specs for the Switch 2 console, and it features significantly upgraded hardware capable of supporting modern engines and graphical features. With everything we now know about the Switch 2 console, Starfield could potentially run at respectable settings, but of course that comes on part from Bethesda, who has to focus on optimization for this console specifically. Still, it's safe to assume there will be some compromises with this release. The scope of the game might remain intact, of course, but resolution, texture detail, and draw distance could all take major hits. And that's some important context because of course the Switch 2 is a hybrid console. You can play with the console docked and play on your TV, or you can play with it undocked in handheld mode. And I'm sure the handheld mode will have a lot more compromises than Starfield as compared to the docked mode. Alongside the Switch 2 news, there's another Starfield rumor making waves in the community. A recent data mine suggests that real-time interplanetary travel could be added in future updates to the game. Currently, traveling between planets in Starfield involves fast traveling and loading screens, which many players found immersion breaking, of course. If Bethesda truly adds what we found in these leaks called cruise mode that lets players fly seamlessly from one planet to another, it could fundamentally change how the game feels. Pairing such a transformative update with the Switch 2 and PS5 launches would be a very smart move for the company. It would give returning players a reason to dive back into the game and make Starfield feel fresh for newcomers. Starfield hasn't had the smoothest journey since its launch back in 2023. It sold well out of the gate and has garnered over 15 million players and some decent critic reviews that currently sits at about an 83 on Metacritic, but players were obviously more divided on the game. Many players out there felt it lacked the depth and magic of Bethesda's past RPGs, and of course that doesn't come without merit, and its updates since haven't fully addressed those concerns from the fanbase. Shattered Space, its first expansion, landed with a thud, criticized for being too shallow and not fixing the core gameplay issues that the Starfield already faced. And Bethesda promised more was coming, but the silence at this year's Xbox Games Showcase and Gamescom at this point have unfortunately left fans worried about the game's future. It seems like, well, at least in the background, that they're currently working on the game to make it better, and hopefully the next expansion will be more impactful than Shattered Space. As of right now, all rumors point that these new ports and the second expansion for Starfield are coming in early 2026. I believe it was originally first expected in later 2025, but it seems like they pushed it back further. But that's why the Switch 2 rumor matters, and of course the PS5 rumor along with it. It's a sign that Bethesda hasn't given up on Starfield just yet. A multi-platform release could be the shot in the arm it needs to stay relevant while Bethesda moves forward with the Elder Scrolls 6 and the recently rumored Fallout 5. For Nintendo, hopefully landing a game like Starfield is a massive win. The Switch 2 is already shaping up to have a strong third-party lineup with many titles from Xbox and Microsoft landing on the console. And now, adding Starfield to that mix cements the Switch 2 as a serious third-party contender for current-gen gaming, not just a home for Nintendo's first-party titles. It also signals a new era where Nintendo platforms won't just play catch-up with ports of older games, but will actively share in the release windows of major AAA titles going forward. That's huge for many players out there who want a single device that can play both Nintendo exclusives and major third-party games upon release. And at the end of the day, Starfield on Switch 2 is just a rumor at this point in time, so obviously take it with a grain of salt. But given Microsoft's evolving release strategy, Bethesda's history, and the mounting evidence of multi-platform releases from them, at this point it feels more like a matter of when rather than if. If it does launch in 2026, likely alongside the PS5 version and Starfield's second expansion, it could mark a turning point for the game's legacy. Starfield might never of course become Skyrim of space that many fans out there hoped for, but a fresh wave of players on new platforms could give it the second wind it desperately needs at this point in time. The wasteland of course may belong to Fallout, but the stars still belong to Starfield, and soon those stars might fit right in the palms of Nintendo Switch 2 players everywhere. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel to stay up to date with all the latest Starfield news. And if you're looking for something else to watch, click one of the videos you're seeing on screen right now. I will see you there. Also, a huge thank you to all the amazing channel members.